Morning.
Morning.
Hi, how's everybody doing? All healthy so far?
It's a long spring break.
Like I'm going sideways. It's going crazy.
Yeah, I know. We are happy. Well, we are lucky. Yes.
Yes.
We don't have to work, especially as the happy around.
That's good.
That's crazy.
I'm going to turn off this video because it's being so chunky. I changed some of my Zoom settings, so now it's being a little different. Let me share my screen with you guys. Make sure I've got the right one. Okay, go in here in a minute. Wait a couple minutes for our start time. I'm gonna have to get some background music going for our Zoom sessions here. Something fun. Well, we have a pretty good number of attendees. We did really good Monday. Everybody showing up, being at the right place. I think we had a few that weren't even in our class, but that's all right. We're glad to have anybody. I hadn't really thought about pulling everything together yet to talk about what's going on. So let's look at this real quick. And then if you guys have any questions, we can answer them. Gotta fix that. I am so glad you guys are here, and I wanted to talk about some of the things that OTC has decided to do and clarify, because I know there were questions and things are definitely up in the air, so there could always be changes. But right now, OTC has decided that nobody will receive a grade below their midterm grade. So I know I mentioned that Monday, but I guess I wanted to clarify. So your grade can see improvement only. Now, of course, some instructors were all like, well, what about those people that just won't do any work? And the response from OTC's administration was wonderful. They said, you know, we're going to look at the positive aspect of all of our students. We know that they want to learn as much as they can from their classes, and this is just a way to try to reduce the overall stress when there's so much going on. I know for me sometimes it's really hard to focus, even though I don't have anything else going on, just worry and concern. And then the pass, no pass option. This one is still, I think they're still working out some of the details, but their thing is just hang on, because this is going to be an option that's going to be available. You'll be marked with a P if you have 60% or higher in a class, and the instructors won't be involved in this at all. So I'll assign your grade at the end of the semester, and then you'll be able to fill out some sort of form or request separately to change the grade to a pass, no pass. Now, I did this at Missouri State when I was in school. You were always able to put things on pass, fail. And I usually did that with PE classes and things like that. So we want to try to use that kind of thing for classes outside of our major. But it's an option that's there, that's going to be there for you guys. I guess it's not quite there, but it will be. So we'll see what that's like. What else? One computer lab will be open at the Springfield campus and one at all the other campuses if you're closer to a different campus. Wi-Fi is available in the parking lots at OTC, and they're trying to boost those signals so that you can get reasonable connection. Wi-Fi is also available in the parking lots at the Springfield and Greene County libraries. And traveling to one of these areas to do your schoolwork is an essential activity. So school is one of the things that is allowed. So it would be okay for you to go do that. I mentioned the remote desktop client last time. That is available if you're using a Chromebook or some sort of, netbook, not a full-fledged computer, if you just have a cloud-based machine. And this remote desktop works really well. It's brand new. He's just got it all set up, super fast, and it'll let you use Visual Studio. It's 2017 is what they have installed. Now for us, I know you guys were all pretty well ready Monday. Just to review, we should only need the Zoom client. Of course, that's optional because you can run Zoom in the cloud. The Discord client, which is also, again, optional because it could be cloud-based. Sure, just a second, James, and I'll go back to that. I'm going to comment. And then we're going to need Visual Studio. Now, if you think of anything else that we use all the time, let me know and I'll add it to the list because, I've had my computer set up for a while and it is hard to remember what all I've installed. Okay, so our grades will be working as we go. These things that I was talking about, James, are OTC decisions, and they're great decisions. So what's going to happen is your grade will not be allowed to fall below whatever your midterm grade was. And there will be a pass, no pass option available at the end of the semester, where if you have a 60% or above, you can put the class on a pass, no pass status, and you'll get a P as a grade. Now, OTC has worked with Missouri State and a lot of the other colleges that we do transfer credits with, and they've all said that they're going to accept these P grades for general ed classes. But of course, you'd want to work with your school about that, where you're going to transfer to. Okay, does that answer your questions? I know there's still a lot. Just be sure to know that OTC has got your back. They're trying really hard to make sure that things work out in the best way for students, that you guys don't suffer because of all of this mess. Now for our class, again, we'll meet via Zoom at our regular time unless that starts not working out for people. Log your attendance in the daily attendance form. I put the link in Discord. So in our CIS150 151 server, under the general channel, there's the link to today's attendance. Now, the reason I made that a form, I can tell if you were in the Zoom session, but if you're unable to join the Zoom session and you watch the video later, I would like you to go ahead and log your attendance for when you're able to do that so that I know, what kind of time frames people are working under. Now, because of that, I'll try to post that form URL, attendance form, to the YouTube video as a comment, so you can get to that attendance form easily. So just be sure to log that, and then I'll know that you watched it or you were here sometime. And if I see on that form that everybody's having to watch the video later, we'll adjust. We'll just adjust our schedule. Okay, questions about all of that great stuff that's all up in the air. Don't forget, if you need technology, they're trying to figure out ways to get people stuff, loan out technology, all those kinds of great things. Well, last time we were working with a class. We jumped right back in and created a class that had information about audio CDs. And we're going to come back to that, but not right at the moment because we're going to get started using Windows Forms. So Windows Forms kind of, I don't know, created the Windows world. Without Windows Forms, Windows, just wouldn't be as important as it is. They're really important. Let me switch things here. And I'd like you to see, whoops, how about the beginning of this thing instead of the end? Too many open. There's the one we want. And I'll switch this, fix that soon. Whenever we're working with Windows, we are used to working with Windows, right? We know what to expect. We know that there's a big red X up in the corner if we want to close the window. We know that there's a minimize button. There's a restore or resize button. We know that on the left-hand side of our form, we have a little icon for our application. We are used to all of these things. We know how to resize a window. They all work the same, right? That's the great thing about Windows. And of course, you see that with Linux too, right? With the Linux distributions that have kind of copied that ease of use and things because it's just easy to use. So whenever we're working with Windows Forms, we're working with a graphical user interface or a GUI. And our GUI is kind of a way to give our users pictures instead of just words. Because we know a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it's so much easier to remember something that's visual than something that's wordy. And so that's why it's so great for us to move away from our console apps, because with Windows Forms, sometimes it's a little easier to see what's going on in our application. So what is all this here that I have? Well, this is talking about how Windows Forms are set up. The system.windows.forms namespace contains all of the classes that we use when we're working with Windows Forms. So we'll need to add a using statement for that namespace if we're working with Windows Forms. Of course, if we use the Windows Forms template in Visual Studio, that'll be done for us. Now, when we're creating a Windows Forms app, of course, we're creating a GUI application. We have the ability to do drag and drop construction, where we can say, I want this text to appear here, I want this picture to appear here, and we can build things kind of on the fly. Everything that we place on a Windows form is part of a control class. So we have some different control classes like labels, text boxes, buttons, things that we're used to seeing on a graphical user interface. We also have some different containers like group boxes, and a group box might hold a series of radio buttons, that are related. And our form itself that holds all of this graphical user interface information is the main container. So let's look at this blow up here. It starts out that our Windows Forms namespace has a class like a label. Whenever we use that class and our form is displayed, we instantiate that object. That object then has properties, just like when we created our audio CD class, it had properties, and those properties have values. So I don't know what you guys made me like Dead Kitten or something, but that was a value we used for one of our properties, right? So here's a Windows form. Main thing about it, consistency. If you've used Windows before, you know how to use Windows, right? You don't have to learn a whole new interface every time you come up with a new application. A Windows form responds to our user interaction. What's HCI? Oh no, Mac won't work. You should be able to install some updates for the Mac and get it to work, but I have never investigated that. Human computer interface, is that right? acronym there. So that means that Windows Forms responds to, you know, mouse clicks or joysticks or whatever kind of interface you might have installed. When we're working with Windows Forms, we want to make sure that we design our form in a way that items are properly aligned. We don't want it to be all cluttery, and we want to take care with color, you know, just like if you're designing a website or anything else that users are going to look at. We want to be concerned about color coordination and not going overboard with colors. We want to always be thinking of our target audience. For example, one application that you could think of is Photoshop. When Photoshop was created, the tools were not called things, names that were meaningful to the developers, right? They didn't say paint board for the palette. They said, oh, artists use the term palette. So that's the term we should use because we want to be working with artists. So we need to be aware of our target audience, use their verbiage, their keywords, and make sure that our terminology matches up with their terminology. All right, look at a Windows form. Here we've got one. It's a real basic one. It doesn't have anything on it, but it still has some stuff, right? It has a title bar. And on my title bar, I have my close, resize, and minimize options. And I also have this control menu. Have you ever used it? Every Windows app has that control menu, and that just gives us the same options as are available through those icons. Just double click. So anyways, that's the old Windows 3.1 control menu before we got the big red X. So when I look at a form, across the top, I'm used to seeing some sort of title, my title bar. Usually with an application, it's going to show you the name of the application and then the name of the project or active document or something that you're working on. We want to do that same type thing. In this form, the word simple Windows application has been set to the value of the text property of the actual form object. We'll see how to do that. Looking at this form, first of all, the whole entire form is an instance of the form class, the Windows form class. This form is named Windows 0. We're going to create it just in a second. And it is an object, an instance of the form class. And then within the form class, we have the property named text. And we set that text property to the value simple Windows application. So we have a lot going on there. So let's do it. Here's our little application. I want to open Visual Studio and I want to let's create a console app so that we can see the process we'd have to go through to convert that to a Windows form app. Visual Studio here. So I want to create a new project. And I'm going to make a console app. Our next project that we create will use a Windows Forms app. So double check and make sure you have that template so that we can go find that template if some of you are needing it. Different versions, different installs, all those kind of great things. So let's create this one. I'm going to create WinForm 0, just because that's what they've got it named, and we named it that in the presentation. So we're going to call this application WinForm 0. It's going to be a console app, and then we're going to convert it to use Windows Forms. Gotta look at something here. Sorry, hang on. Okay. Too much open. That's what I want, is the code. So let's rename our program file. And I'm just going to make it like this example. And I want it to be named Windows 0. And yes, I want to rename everything. So perfect, I've got my class all set. This is going to be a Windows form. Now let's do some things with our using statements. We don't need any of the using statements that we have. We need system.windows.forms. And now we'll have access to the forms library. Well, I'll just leave it because it's complaining at me that it's unnecessary. We'll see, maybe a change. Now, in my class statement, my class is going to be dependent upon the Windows Forms class. So I'm going to use what's called inheritance, where I'm going to say this class inherits from the form class. And I'm not having any luck. Let's change this. I don't want to waste a bunch of time. I'm going to close this solution. No, I don't want to save my changes. And let's make a new project. I told you we would switch it to Windows Form manually, but it's not going to be worth it. Let's just create a Windows Forms app from the beginning. Sorry about that. And we'll name it Windows 0, like they did. Restart, restart. Gotta call those 2020 memes, huh? Let's just shut it down and restart. Okay, well, now that I did it as a Windows form, it's a little bit different. We've already got a form created here for us. Windows has gotten it all set up, and we're gonna get to that. But for right now, let's just look at our code. So again, I would like to rename our program.cs. And we're gonna name it Windows 0. Now, it looks a little different than what we're used to. Now we have our using statement and everything. I don't know why it was being just persnickety with me before, but we don't have time like that to waste. So now everything is happy. It is different. It is a little different than what we're used to with our standard application. A couple of things. We have this badge here that is a threading badge that would allow us to specify different threads in our forms-based application, multi-processing type threads. So at this point, we'll just leave that badge the way it is. And then we have our main method, just like we've always had, that says this is how we run our application. We use a couple of methods that come from the Windows Forms application namespace. First, we enable visual styles. Don't know what's going on there. Windows says to do it, all right. And then we set some rendering defaults. And then we run our form. Here's my form, Form 1. Here it is, so it's got the same name, notice. Now I'm going to try to run this. Let's click Start. And there is our Windows form. Let me minimize all this junk behind it so you can see it and appreciate it in its beauty. Cover up that Java logo. Okay, so here is our form. We've got this beautiful Windows form. It says Form 1. Notice that we inherited all of this form consistency. We have our minimize button, our restore, and our close. We have our control menu, and we have our text property of our form that says Form 1. Let's change that text property so it says something a little more meaningful. Whenever we're working with our forms class, we can add additional methods, just like always. So let's create a constructor. Just not happy with me at all, huh? Let's see if it's going to let me do this. Let's make it Windows 0. It says your constructor is the wrong name. Things are a little different here. Let's move this line of code. Now, we'll be able to create a constructor. But for right now, let's just move it. And I'm going to put it right before our form gets displayed. And I want this to be well, it's just being a real jerk to me, huh? I think that when I started out, I used a .NET setting or something. All right, so we have this beautiful Windows form. The main thing that I want you to get out of this, I apologize, is that our main is still important. Our program.cs file is still going to be the thing that starts up our application. And it's going to start up our application by saying we want to run an instance of a form. Now, our form is a new object type that we can find in Solution Explorer. We haven't seen a form before, so it's a brand new type of thing for us. Let's save this one and get out of it because I am tired of it. And let's go back to looking at what else we need to do here. Now, whenever I run into some differences in versions like that, I would prefer for it to be outside of class, but today is one of those days. So we're going to have to look and see what's the difference. And I'll have you do that, and I'll report back to you on that also, see what we're doing different. And I don't think it's that big of a deal. But this example code that I've given to you in Canvas in this PowerPoint explains what's happening here. First of all, our class is Windows 0, and it inherits from the Windows Form class. The constructor for the class here just sets the text property of the form. Our main still starts the program. Here we're instantiating an instance of our form called WinForm, and then we're running it. When we do this instantiation, it runs our constructor, sets the text property, and then we display that form. Now, some things to think about before we really get into our forms-based processing. When we're working with a console app, we're working top-down. We only have that character-based display. And whenever we hit the closing curly brace of our main method, that halts the execution of our program. It's done, right? It's not running anymore. Whenever we're working with a console app, we're using the operating system for our input and output. When we use a Windows form, we're changing modality. Instead of just running with top-down code, we're going to be running in an event-driven mode. Our code is going to be associated with events. Our application is going to sit in a process loop, basically executing, waiting for an event to occur. We'll be notified by the operating system that an event has occurred, and then we'll have our chunks of code, our event handlers, process our data based on the event. So what kind of event might that be? Well, when we place things on our form, they're called controls. We have a whole toolbox full of controls that we can use. We're going to drag and drop the controls onto the form to add them to our user interface design. So our user is going to basically see whatever we see in design mode of our form. Now, besides dragging and dropping controls onto our form, we can actually create code to instantiate instances of controls. So if we needed to add a new label to our form at runtime, we could do that. So I have that ability. So every time I add a control to a form, this is a text box. We'll use it in just a minute. That control has many properties. So I'm going to look at the properties window to see all of the different properties available for a control so that I can set it appropriately. Oh, stuff to look at. Let's do it. So let's create a new project. I'm going to get rid of this one. Close it. I don't see any other Windows Form app. So I'm going to use the Windows Forms app.net framework again, and make sure you've got your save location where you want it. If you're connected to TFS, you could add this to source control. I'm not, but I'm going to create form sample. How's that? Because I want you to create your hello world on your own. So where's the toolbox? Well, my toolbox is actually over here. It has a tab, but I can click on it and I can see it. And while I'm working on my form, I'm probably going to want to pin it. So if I pin my toolbox, then it's going to always stay open while I'm working on my form design. But I don't have to. In the toolbox, we have different categories of tools. So every tool is under this All Windows Forms category. Common Controls has, just like it says, things that we use often, labels and texts, things like that. Containers, not too many of them. We can have all of these different types of categories. I usually stick with All Windows Forms because I like to be able to see them all, but it's totally up to you. Now, whenever we're working with a control, again, it has properties. I don't have any controls on my form yet. Here's my blank form, Form 1, but I could actually change the properties for my form. So let's do that first. I clicked on my form to select it, and in my properties window, which should be over here on the side. Now, what if these things aren't showing up for you in your view menu? First of all, the properties window. I'm thinking it's under other windows.
Maybe very the end at the bottom, the property window. Oh.
That one, yeah, that's it. Because I saw that other one and I was like, I don't think that's it. So there are multiple. That is the one we want. That's your properties window. And then where's your toolbox? Right here. So you can find those those windows pretty easily. Okay, so I have my form and I'd like to change this text property on my form so that it says something besides Form 1. So in my properties window, I can scroll back and forth. There are lots of properties. So it's really, really important that you order your properties in a way that you can find them. Because I'm demonstrating for you guys, I have my properties sorted alphabetically. If I click on this and sort it, sort it by categories, it's not a toggle, it's a separate item. Then I'm going to have appearance categories, behavior categories. And so I can find things, but not quite as easily for us. So I'm going to stay in alphabetical view. So that's what those first two tools are on the little properties toolbar. Now, as I look at the properties for my form, notice right up here, it says what control I'm working on. I'm working on my Form 1 control. I want to find the text property. And I'm going to change the value of the text property. And we'll make it be Hello World. Now you should see that property change on your form. Now you can run your application and see your form in live mode. So notice how that text property shows up as the title of your form. Now, while my application is running, remember it's sitting here idle, waiting for some sort of event to occur. This icon will show in your toolbar that you have your Visual Studio application running. You can't make changes in Visual Studio while your form is being displayed. So be careful of that. If you're going click, click, and it's ding, dinging and won't let you type anything, is your application running? That's usually what that problem is. Alrighty, so my form is working and I got my title changed and it looks good, and it's really easy to change because these properties are super easy to work with. Now, some other things that make Windows forms really easy to work with. We have a standard Windows way of dealing with things. So if I want to resize my form, I can just grab a resizing handle and make it bigger. I can run that. And voila, there it is. It's bigger. Now that's just a startup size. Of course, I could change the size as the application is running. Now, one thing to be really careful of that I've seen some web developers do, remember this form does not have a scroll capability. So if I make it taller than a window, let's see if I did. I need to make it a little taller, but I can do that in design mode. I can just make it way too tall. Too tall, too tall. And then my users are not going to be able to see what's at the bottom. So it's not like a website. It's not going to automatically start letting you scroll. We have that capability, but it doesn't happen just automatically. So be aware of that you need to size your form in a way that it's visible. Okay, put that back a little bit. Now, if I didn't want to use the grab and drag type thing, drag and drop resizing, I could use properties on my form. Let's check. Right here is my size property. It is an expandable property because my size has both a width and a height. So I can change my height back to a smaller amount. I could go a little bit smaller if I wanted. And I can change that property using the properties window. Okay, cool. Now, let's put a label on our form. Find your toolbox. Has everybody got their toolbox? You got a toolbox, you got a form, got everything? Let me know if you're missing something so we can get you fixed. What you missing? Okay. All right, because sometimes we have Visual Studio installations that aren't cooperating. No problem. So I want a label. I'm going to put a label on here, and I think I want it to just say like hello. So here's my label control. Now to add a control to a form, we have a lot of options. You can click on the control and drag and drop. You can double click on the control and it'll be placed right up here at the top left corner of your form. Now if I don't want that control while it's selected, I can press delete, just like if it were some sort of art thing or image in Word. So I can use all those standard movements. I'm going to grab that label and I want it kind of here in the middle. Now, when I dropped the label, notice it just made it whatever size it wanted. Labels are self-sizing, so as we add text and different things, it'll change. So let's put some text in that label. Now, it's really small, so I'm going to go find the font property, and in my font property, I can expand that property and change the individual font details. I think I'll make it 14 bigger. That's good. Not too bad. Notice in your font dialog you have, or your font settings, you can change the actual font name. You could make it bold, italicized, strike out, underline, basically all of the different font capabilities that you have. Now let's run our application and see our label. Ah, there it is. Yay, label. Let's change our label a little more. Now, if I want to change my form, I could click back on a blank spot on my form, and now my properties window has my form as current. If I want to change properties of my label, I can click on my label, and now my label properties are current. So in our label properties, let's change our color. Our for color right now is black. Let's click in that property. And if you look, when you open up that drop down, it only shows you the system colors. So depending on your color scheme in Windows, it can be kind of boring. If you look at web, you have a few more color options by name. If you look at custom, you have a little bit more of a palette, and you can kind of build your own colors. So let's pick something a little bit more.
Do you know if there's a way to customize it, like with the numbers that are the codes?
Yeah, so when you do custom, you should be able to click in one. I'm not seeing. There it was, I right clicked. And then you can add your color.
Oh, cool.
You see it? Did it do it? I just got black. I'm not so good with those, but yes. So right click on an empty spot in the custom colors, and you can set your own customized color so you can make it be what you want. Now let's run and make sure we got our color changed. Great. So we could do that in our code too. We'll learn. So we have a label now. It's working great. Let's put an image on our form. Let's find something. I'm going to do a happy face image. Did you see I come up with happy face killer? That is you guys' fault. That is your fault. Making me look at bad things. Okay, find me a happy face. Where's our little happy face with the mask? I don't see him. That's all right. I'll get this guy. He's interesting. Oh, he's also like, should search for stuff that's not copyrighted, but we're not really going to do much with it. But I do want to save it. So let's see if I can find one that's easier to save. There we go. So now the way I'm going to save it, and you guys can save an image however you like doing it, but we want to make sure we import it into Visual Studio in a certain way. So for me, to make sure that everybody can see what I'm doing, I'm going to right click on that image, and I'm going to choose Save Image As. Now I want it to go into my Pictures folder. And right now it's named Happy-Face, which is fine. So I'm just going to save it in my Pictures folder. Now I can't really, like, I could copy and paste this image into Visual Studio, but that just would be a very, very ugly way of doing it. And we wouldn't want to do that because we want to treat this image as a resource. It is going to be a resource in our application, just like if we had a website. So we want to make sure it's an actual file. Okay, so I have my image saved. Did you find something to save, or do you have an awesome image that you've created that you can use? Got one. So let's add that image. Now, when I am working with an image, as I mentioned, it's a resource and it's going to be controlled by a picture box. So I'm going to use my toolbox and find my picture box control. And with my picture box control, I should be able to drag and drop a size so if I click and hold and drag, I can kind of control the size of that picture box. Now my picture box control has properties, and if you notice, because that's my current control, that's the control that's displaying in my properties window, and it's already at the image property. What image would you like this picture box to display? So I can change that property there, but also I have this quick action tool, quick tasks, where Visual Studio will say, hey, for picture boxes, usually people want to pick an image. Do you want to do that? And so this quick task just has really common tasks associated with it. So let's do it. Let's choose our image. Now my image is something that I want to copy into my project. So I want to bring it into my project resource file. So I'm going to make sure my select resource is set like this. And I'm going to click import. Go to my pictures folder and find my happy face. Now I see in my resources that I have that happy face. Now click OK. Now he's not quite fitting in my picture box properly, so I can adjust my size mode. Try the different settings so you can see. If I stretch my image, it's a little bit wonkety, right? I can auto size, not too bad. I can center my image, not much different. It could be different depending on the image though, so you know. And then zoom, also not much different. So all of those are fine. But whoa, I noticed what happened here. I wasn't even paying attention. When I did that, stretch image, you notice how, or auto size, notice how it resized my picture box. That wasn't what I wanted. So I pressed Control Z to go back so that my picture box was its original size. So I don't want to use the auto size because that changes the size of the picture box. What about center image? Now, it centers in, but I'm missing stuff on both sides. And I can do zoom, and that should usually be the one that I want. And it just tries to fit the image in your picture box. Notice it's got some borders depending on the size. All right, let's run. Woohoo! Do you guys have pictures showing up? Can we see them? I'm going to stop share. I want to see somebody's beautiful form. Let me see, let me see. Hey, nice. Who else? Let's see another one. Nobody else working? Oh, there we go. Come on, go. Let's see it. Puppy's sitting in his food. Anybody else? Come on, let's see what you got. Show us if you're having trouble so we can fix ya. Want you to be working. Oh, nice. That was a fast one, Greg. Anybody else? Got some good ones. Our happy face guy. Okay, well, let's add more to our app then. Oh, yay. Let's see, Jonathan. Oh, that looks cool. Now, a couple of things that people have found is they've been working with Windows Forms. If you have an image with animation, it should just automatically play the animation. So you shouldn't have to worry about doing anything to make that happen, which is cool. Okay, I'm going to share mine again. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a button. I don't know. We could have this work so many different ways, but I think a button is the best way. So I want to go close out my running application. There it is. Look at me, blind. And I want to add a button. And so what I'm thinking is that when someone clicks my button, I'm going to display the smiley face and the hello world message. So I'm going to make my form a little bit smaller. And I think I'm going to put my button down here. I'm going to make it a great big one. So I'm going to find my button control. And I'm going to put my button on here. Now, all of our controls when we're working with Windows Forms usually have some sort of text displayed on them, like our form, you know, our label, our button, and that's almost always the text property. So we have that consistency. We know it's the text property that we need to change if we want to change the text that's displayed. So for this button, let's say we're going to say, click for a message. Now with our button, by default, that's going to create an event, right? If somebody clicks on a button, that's an event. So since we're working with event-driven programming, we can add code to our button event of someone clicking it. Let's do a little bit more customizing of our button first though. So for our button, so you have the same properties as we've seen with some of our other controls, our size. Location is where the button is on our form, so we can modify that. We can change the alignment of our button text. Right now mine is set to the middle center. Click on that drop down and notice how that works. It's kind of cool. So if I want to change my text alignment to upper left, I would click that quadrant or that sticky spot. So that's how we can change our location. So notice when you change the location, the alignment, it does have verbiage that goes along with it, but we use this visual interface to actually set it. Now I'd like my words, I think, to be a little bit bigger. So again, it's that font property. I'll change my font, make it, I don't know, 18. I don't want it to be quite as big as my hello world message. And then I don't like the colors, but I'd like to change my background color and my foreground color. So let's go to our back color. Now notice we could add an image as the background too if we wanted to. Kind of ugly on a button to add an image, but you know, you might want an image that shows over to the side, and so then that would be something that you could add on your button. Let's change our color. I'm going to make it be, I want something that'll not be too gross with those other awful colors I have. Where in the world? Okay, I'm going to do midnight blue, and then I need to change my fore color because you can't see it. I'm going to just change things however I want.
Is there a way to change the border of it?
Sure. We have a few settings. So in the flat appearance, you have a lot of border settings. And then the flat style kind of has some custom, standardized borders. So like if you make it a pop-up button, it's hard to tell in design mode, but when you run it, you can see the changes. But yeah, these border color and border size in your flat appearance settings. And then because you can create instances of these controls in your code, you could kind of customize it pretty heavily in that way. Let's run it. Okay, here's my app, and my button right now doesn't do anything. So I need to add some code to make it do something, an action, and then we'll have an application that has some code associated with it. So far, we've been having our great time with our form design. So I think that I want to make it where my image and my hello world don't show up when the application starts. So I'm going to click on my image, and I'm going to find the visible property, and I'm going to change that from true to false. Now I want to do the same thing in my label. So if I click on my label now, notice that the properties window will stay at the same property. Now, because the visible property is something that the picture box and the label both share, I could update both of those controls at the same time. So if I clicked on my picture box and then held my control key to select my label, I would be able to set them both to false so that they don't show up when the application runs. So being able to select multiple controls to update those properties can be a real time saver. All right, let's try running it now. We shouldn't see anything but our button now. Good, just my button. So I'd like to add some code to my button so that when I click it, it makes these things visible. So we're going to add our first event procedure. The event that we're concerned about is somebody clicking this button. So the easiest way to add the event procedure is to just double click the button in design mode. When you do that, it'll create the event procedure for you. I'm going to unpin my toolbox and move some of this stuff out of the way while we're looking at our code. So here is our form code that looks a lot more like that one I was trying to create earlier. I don't know what the heck happened there. But notice our event procedure. It's just a method. It's a private method. It's only available to our Form 1 class. It's void because it doesn't return any data. And the way it's named is always going to be standard. So the first part of the name is going to be the control, and our button is named button 1. And then there's going to be underscore and then the event. So we want to run this code when somebody clicks button 1. Now the parameters that are sent to us are things that are going to be generated by the form. So we don't really worry about those too much unless we're getting into pretty in-depth things. So in our button 1, we said we want to change our controls to visible. I can use the this keyword, and the this keyword, if you remember when we're working with objects, always refers to the current object. So that would be this form, right? This form within our application. If I use this keyword, then IntelliSense will be able to give me a drop down of all of the controls on my form when I type a dot. So let's see, we had a picture box. Oh, there he is. Pick box 1. So for picture box 1, when I type the dot, again, I'm going to see all of the properties and methods that are associated with the picture box. And we were messing with the visible property. Sometimes there's so many, it's like, what? But it'll help you find them if you can sort of remember. So we want to say our visible property should be equal to true. We want to see it now. Now we also want to see our label. So I can type label 1 without having the this. It just won't give me that drop-down list. So what I've done here is I've said, when somebody clicks button 1, I want to set picture box 1 to visible, and I want to set label 1 to visible. Let's try it. Okay, here's our application. Now if we click our button, we should see our stuff. Yay! Is it working?
You got an error of some sort.
Let's see what you got. I'll stop sharing. Show us what you got. We'll fix it.
That.
Oh, good. That's a really bad one too, huh? It's super scary. So everybody take a look at this, because this one will really, really scare you when you run into it. What happens is, whenever you double click on things on your form in Form Designer, Visual Studio creates an event procedure for you, that method, right? And then if you delete that method, it breaks everything. So what we have to do is we have to delete a line of code that was generated by Visual Studio. So up there where it says go to code, I wish you could see me pointing. Go over from where you are. Yep, right there. Go to code and delete that line that has an error. And as long as you only delete that one line, you won't cause any other trouble and everything will be fine. Now see if you can see your form.
Yay.
Yay, much better. So if you notice, his form was totally not showing up. It was acting like it was really broken. And we just had to delete that line of code. Okay. Is anybody's working with their button?
I'll show you mine if you want.
Yeah, let's see.
Sure.
He's super cute. He's kind of freaky with that weird person mouth. Do you think he has dentures? Somebody Photoshop him. Yay! Awesome. Is anybody else that's working? Let's see what you've got. Yay! That looks really good. So cute. Love it. Anybody else? Okay, let's do a few more changes here. Whenever we're working with our application, in our event procedures, we can change things that have to do with any part of our application. So in our button event procedure, let's change the text property of our form. So remember, my this keyword is the current form. So I can change this dot text. And let's set it equal to something. So I'll set it to say good morning, just so we can see the change. Let's run it. Beautiful. So we see our form text changed because we changed it in our code. We could also change, whoops, where am I? There we go, it's not clicking on me. In my form class, I could create a variable that was a class level variable that was a global variable. And let's create one that's just an integer that is a counter. And let's start with it equal to 0. Then in our button event procedure, let's do some things depending on that. If our count is equal to 0, let's do our stuff here that we've been doing. Otherwise, let's change our labels text. So if they've already clicked it once, let's change that text property. Let's just add our count to it. And then after our if statement, we'll add to our counter. So now we're saying, no, they might click this button more than once. And if they do, I'm going to keep track of it. So let's try it. So here's my message. So that should be good. That was my first time. And then I should be adding, and I am not in a very nice way, huh? Adding my counter to that label. So that's awesome. Let's set it up in the debugger. I want to set up a breakpoint right here at the beginning of my button one click event. So I'm going to put it right there. Now, lots of reasons to do this when we're using forms-based code. One really important reason is my code doesn't do anything. I put this code in, I have my event procedure, I run it, it does nothing. Well, you can set a breakpoint in the debugger to make sure your code is being executed, because there could be a problem with the connection. And we will talk about that a bunch. But let's start running this way. Now, my debug session is not going to do anything until I click my button, because that's where I set my breakpoint. Now my debugger is taken over, and I'm in my if statement. I can see my count is 0. If I step into, we should see that if statement execute, set those properties, update our form, and then add to our count. Perfect. Now if we click again, now our count is 1. So in our if statement, we should go to the else clause, update our labels text property, and then add to our count. Okay, I'm going to stop there. See if this is going to load. There it goes. Yeah, Windows forms are just really cool. Let's look at your assignment, make sure that we're ready. The video should be pretty similar to what we did today, so you can fast forward through it, but I think you should be pretty well set. I'd like to just see a hello world in TFS. Oh, look at that. You don't even have to turn anything in. You're going to get 10 points if I can find a hello world project in TFS. Now, that was mean of me, wasn't it, that I did not name our project Hello World. That means that I want you to create a new one and make it different, try some different things. Make sure that you explore so that you get to feeling a little bit more comfortable with the environment. Welcome to try different code and options. We're just getting started with our Windows forms. So I know that you have lots and lots of things you'd like to try, and we'll get a chance to do a lot of those. Next week, we'll talk about some more advanced things working with our event procedures. We snuck ahead a little bit there and looked at some event procedures there with our button click, so that's good. So how is everybody with that RAPL? Might need to end with it. You can get together with your study groups in Discord, set up a chat. Of course, you guys already have them all set up for you. Make sure you keep with your study group. Any help that anybody needs, get together today and, create a Unit 3 notes document to share with your study group, just like you did for Unit 2. Get some things going if you haven't already. Get some things in the notes about arrays and about the basics of Windows forms. And then, like I said, we'll talk more about event procedures. So as you see, when we start with Windows forms, we're just going to be building on the C# code that you guys have already learned. We're going to be practicing it more and more. We're just going to be using a different way of testing and seeing our results because we'll be in our Windows Forms GUI environment instead of the console-based environment. So that gives us a lot of capability. I think we're good. I think there's one last thing I'd like to show you, though. I'm going to turn off this breakpoint. And I'm going to go to my form design. And I'm just going to add a little bit more here to my form. And find my toolbox. And put another button. This button, I'm going to say, is a pop-up. And I'm just going to leave it ugly. I'm going to double click on it to add some code. And what I want to show you is the message box. Message box is a class that's available with Windows Forms in the Forms library. And I can say messagebox.show. And then in my parameter list, the first parameter is text that I want displayed in a message box. So I can just say, hello world. And run this. And now if I click this pop-up, I'll see that message box. Okay, I just wanted to show him to you really fast because that can be something that you might want to use in your Hello World application. So your Hello World application, if I see it in TFS, that'll be the points. Use it to experiment, try some things. Let me know if you're having trouble so I can help. As we saw earlier, you can have a small problem that just is totally decimates your project. And if you don't know how to get out of it, it can be quite overwhelming. So do let me know. Save it to TFS and make a new one. All right, that's it for today, unless anybody has any questions.
I have a question about probably something that's far ahead, but I'm taking a web dev class. Can this be combined with web dev like Java can?
Yes and no. Microsoft has, they're sort of like the Microsoft way and the open source way. So when you're working with JavaScript, you're working with an open source type language. C# is becoming more like that. Right now, C# runs at the server side. So we would be server side backend code to that web HTML JavaScript front end code. A Windows form is actually designed to run really just on a Windows platform. So as things evolve, we're seeing that kind of be enhanced and changed all the time. The best one right now, let me find it for you. Oops, I did not. See if I can get it spelt the way they do. There it is. ASP.NET is active server pages over .NET, and so that's the server side of a web-based implementation. And so Razor is a new endeavor that Microsoft is working on with in an open source environment that will allow C# to be running on the server side and the client side. So it's a very exciting, dynamic time. There's lots going on. Right now, actually, what is it they say? .NET Core has more open source code in it right now than Apache. So I don't know if that's true. That's what I've heard. So lots of things afoot, but look at Razor because it's super awesome. So very, very nice. Any others? We got it. Okay, have fun with your Windows forms. It's really good stuff, and they're used all over. It's going to help you with a lot of different things. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you Monday morning. Have a great weekend.